I'm going to have everyone return. We'll give just a second and I'll queue up a few questions. At this point, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A button. But in addition to that, I have quite a few questions that have been sent in over the course of this, this mini symposium. And so, alrighty, we're gonna go ahead and get the ball rolling with a question for Dr. Casa Santo. So somebody asked, how did your academic experiences motivate you to pursue this specific discipline of theoretical cognitive neuroscience?
So there are different answers to how did I end up working on the kind of stuff that I presented, and how did I end up working on cognitive neuroscience in general. So Annabella, in her very generous and kind introduction, mentioned that I used to be an opera singer, which doesn't obviously lead to neuroscience. As a singer, one time I got sick and I went from doctor to doctor, and each ear, nose, and throat doctor told me there's nothing wrong with you medically, go see your teacher. It's a technical problem, and I was convinced it wasn't. And finally, I got to a doctor who was himself not only an ear, nose, and throat doctor, but himself a professional singer. And before poking and prodding, he said, sing for me. I said, all right. And I sang for him, and he said, it's not a technical problem, it's a medical problem. And it was his knowledge of the voice, both as a medical doctor and as a singer, that allowed him to correctly diagnose and treat what was going on with me. If I had followed the advice of all of these other people who weren't singers, even though they were fine doctors, they would have ruined my voice. And it was very dramatic and also very inspiring. I apprenticed myself to this singer/doctor, and eventually ended up going through a post-baccalaureate pre-medical program so that I could be in an arts medicine program at his med school. But while I was taking the train to med school and I was making this huge transition, I had always thought that I didn't like math and science. And I found that I could hardly have been more wrong. But I realized in discovering math and science and my love for it, that medicine wasn't really the right path. And I knew this because as I rode the train in, instead of reviewing my flashcards like all the other med students on the train every morning, I was reading philosophy of mind and neuroscience and cognitive science books. And it finally occurred to me that even if my family thought I was crazy for changing courses again, I had to stop my medical training and redirect toward cognitive neuroscience. So it certainly wasn't on purpose.
Thank you. And now we have some more general questions for all of you. And the first is, how has COVID-19 affected the pursuit of creating equitable spaces of discovery? Priya, if you'd like to begin. Oh, wait, sorry, you just took a bite of something. Are you good to?
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's an interesting question. Well, I know that COVID has sort of decimated, well, I mean, it's definitely affected academic hiring for sure, but it's affected hiring everywhere. And where you guys are in your path, hopefully that will all be fixed by the time that you are ready to actually look for jobs. So I think that effect is maybe a little dampened. I think in a weird way, at least if you think of if you're focusing on grad school as one place for doing discovery, I think grad school has sort of become like a safer place to be because you're insured from the market. So you have 5 or 6 years of a guaranteed income to, study where you study whatever you want to study. So maybe grad school is a little more appealing than going on the job market during the pandemic. So maybe in that way, it's made it a little bit easier. I know at Mathematica, we have noticed a very large increase in the amount of funding available for health-related questions. It's because, this pandemic has just exposed all the flaws in the system and how they multiply and make each other worse. And so we've seen lots of funders sort of turn their attention towards these issues. And so I think it sort of increased our ability to kind of pursue more questions related to improving healthcare. But I guess the overall effect is, of course, negative. So these are all sort of trying to search for silver linings in a terrible situation. Of course, everybody has to turn their attention elsewhere. So a lot of the work that you might want to do has to be put on hold to sort of directly deal with the pandemic. So.
Wonderful, thank you. Tony, would you like to comment?
You're saying, can you repeat the question really quick?
Yes, how has COVID-19 affected the pursuit of creating equitable spaces of discovery?
Well, well, when the budget cuts happened, guess what goes first? The arts. So, love hearing from an opera singer here. Love that. I think everyone has the capability of art, right? Everyone should have access to it, right? To me, it's like a human right. And although I'm a coach now, my title at TFA, right? I work for the organization Eastern America right now in Miami-Dade, is Director of Teacher Leadership Development. So I think about usually like the stipend I usually get to run a pilot with teachers to enact a program like mine, right? I want, like, we're at a stage where, like, since mine was successful, I have some impact data, right? You know, soft impact data at the school. They entrusted me to lead others, around 18 other teachers, to do their own, right? We used to have a budget of, I don't know, I think $1,000, $2,000, and it just got cut off. So I was like, what is going on? I'm seeing budgets that are like $87K, right? For like, let's broaden it out to like just like employee resource groups, which are really helpful to sustain the work that we do. Specifically, if you're in Miami, you don't see yourself as an Asian American, for example, like, you need that community, right, to sustain the work, because there's a lot of race-based issues, gender-based violence that people just are not aware of. People would say microaggression, Dr. Ibn Kendi would say racial abuse. So racial abuse happens all over the place, right? So that wears on you. And the funding for like building these communities have just been cut. And then, like, obviously with administration on a federal level, right? You've seen that. It disappoints me, it's my opinion, but on a federal level, it's been cut, right, for federal programming, and that is a travesty. So now when I do anti-racist trainings, to maybe a school wants me to build out their after-school programming, they might preface and say, you know, based on the federal guidelines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we can only provide X, right? Or they just cancel the contract with me when the need is there, right? So it's tough times. That's all I have to say right now. And we're getting creative. And the last thing I'll say is there is a boom for diversity, equity, inclusion work, but what I want to preface and caveat is that I don't want to ever benefit from that, specifically from the uprising, a Black uprising, right? That would be right, appropriating someone else's narrative and someone else's experience right now and benefiting from it, which is horrible in and of itself. So I'm being cautious about seeing ask at the same time, seeing like federal funding go down. A lot of private companies are like asking, hey, can you be DEI specialist, DEI, opening up an after-school program. So there's a big tension there.
Definitely. Thank you, Tony. Dr. Casa Santo.
So it sounds like the effects of the pandemic and on the social sciences and the medical sciences may be somewhat different from the effects on the humanities, if you posit, and I can posit this, I don't know if it's true, if you posit that the huge surge of interest in diversity and inclusion and in funding programs that emphasize diversity and inclusion is in part a result of the pandemic. So the question is, why did the Black Lives Matter movement gather the kind of intensity that it did a few months ago and continuing on. Black Lives Matter was born years before the present moment. There's been police violence ongoing for many, many years. Why now? And I wouldn't be the first person to suggest, well, maybe because our culture was already pushed to a point by the pandemic where we were ready to say, not one more day, no more. Now is the time for change. And in this moment, in the social and medical sciences, there are two huge pushes for funding. One is for COVID related, or maybe two/3. One is for COVID related research. The other is for diversity related research. That the opportunities to apply for funds to do research in either or both of these, or the intersection of these areas, is just staggering. So that is a small but substantial silver lining of this moment.
Thank you very much. We have another question. How can we, as the next generation of researchers, make research opportunities more equitable and accessible for those from underrepresented backgrounds? Anyone is it able to pop in?
Well, I would say exposing people to the opportunities early, like the earlier the better. I think that's really helpful, just because sort of as things move through the pipeline, it can be kind of difficult to catch up if you find out that you do want to go to grad school or you do want to pursue a certain career, but it turns out you needed an undergrad degree or some research experience. So just anything that sort of broadens people's access to understanding what these different career paths are like, I think that's definitely a positive. On a policy level, there's always a discussion every year about should we use the GRE for grad school admissions, or does the upfront cost of taking the GRE and the application fees, does that put people off? Most people I know who went and did a PhD spent almost $1,000 or more than that in application fees, which are not refunded. And obviously, if you don't have that cash in hand, it's going to be a huge deterrent. And most applicants don't know that, at least at some schools, you can ask for a waiver, but you have to fill out a whole form and email with someone, and it takes forever. And so, I think they're addressing a lot of those barriers, like just the cash up front barriers, and those sort of like institutional like hurdles. I think that would be a good thing. Luckily, there seems to be a discussion almost every year. Like every year there's like a wave of schools that says, we're not using the GRE anymore, we're waiving our fees, we're doing this, we're introducing, So I think there are conversations, but I think those are some things that would be helpful.
Thank you very much. It looks like there's one in particular specified for Tony. In your poetry, particularly the one on Coney Island, it seems like you talk about the othering of communities, particularly by white people in systems of power that allowed historical dehumanization of communities that were viewed as lesser than. What do you think can be done, particularly by white allies, to help dismantle this barrier to connection, in turn compassion and belief in success with communities that historically have been discriminated against? What can we do to help dismantle the system of oppression and help bridge the gap?
That's a loaded question. I saw Priya just like nodding her head, cracking up. So I'm going to just like, it sounds so, just stereotypical to say do the work, but part of it is doing the work. And there's a lot of saying and not doing. I'm seeing Instagram posts. I'm seeing a lot. Like the thing is, I live a lot on Instagram. That's how I get connected to a lot of my public speaking opportunities or consulting opportunities. Right? We've nimblized, I guess, our connection with different organizations. So I'm gonna just bring up something that I posted way back on. Posted just recently. It was an article on August 27th, published on NPR. The title is called, it's under the underscore race. As nation reckons with race, poll finds white Americans least engaged. I'm going to read some statistics. Since the death of George Floyd in May, have you personally taken any actions to better understand racial issues in America? Literally, yes, no, don't know. Overall, 36% yes, right? 55% no. And this is broken down by white, Black, Hispanic, and Asian. There should be Native Indigenous. It should be, data disaggregation should be a thing here, but that's another story, another time. White folks, in comparison, 30% say yes, 61% no. So this is, I would say, a survey of 2,000 folks who were surveyed by NPR, right? And NPR does their survey every year. In comparison to Black folks, 41% said yes, Hispanic folks, 51% said yes, Asian folks, 49%, right? I'm not gonna go to all of them. I'm gonna do another one. Okay, which of the following proposals do you support, even if it's neither exactly right? A, fully fund the budget for police in your community at the same level it is now. B, take a portion of the budget for police in your community and redirect those funds to social services, right? It's a recommendation, I would say, in humanities and education. It's one of my personal opinions is a recommendation. It's like we can, once you look at the police budgets, you can see there's an over amount allotted to them, right? And then you see education, we're losing $60,000, right? During this time. It's like we get paid per student and we can't find students right now. So right here, white folks, 63% say fully fund the budget for police in your community at the same level it is now. Black folks, 31% say fully fund the community, 35 for Hispanic, 42 for Asian, right? There's a disparity there already, right? White folks. Just an opinion, right? And like what you agree on. And then last but not least, do you support or oppose the Black Lives Matter movement? There's a couple of options here. I'm just gonna highlight support. White folks, 47% support out of 100. Black folks, 73%. Hispanic, 59. Asian, 59. So that just tells you a lot. It tells you a lot of stories, right? In the data around, out of all that, people who, you can think about the type of person who reads NPR, who takes the survey, right? What type of person they would be? I'm assuming a demographic of young professional, Gen Z, and a combination of more progressive folks in their mid to late 50s. I'm making assumptions here. They have the college educated, and these are the folks these are the same white folks who are saying to continue to fund the police, right? So there's or oppose or not support Black Lives Matter. So there's a problem there, right? That's why other continues to happen, because there's inaction, and then the ideology of white folks needs to be changed too. So the second piece is, if you feel like you're on the right path to making change for, let's say, Black, Indigenous people of color or other communities, then I think you could start with ideologies, right? That's the first part, because ideologies shape your mindset, beliefs shape your actions, right? And if you have the ability to educate your community, I would start there first. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This next question is for everyone. And this is, what platforms have you found most useful to communicate your ideas and bring about societal change beyond the academic realm? What advice do you have for aspiring researchers to share our findings with the public? Dr. Casa Santo, would you like to begin?
Sure. So as a busy academic, it's hard to make time for things that don't fit into your usual routine. But there are two things that I learned early in my time as an assistant professor. I needed to slot in as part of my usual routine. And one was writing for the popular press and talking to the popular press, and really investing in that, because it's hard to translate scientific ideas outside of the scientific community. and the less effort you put in, the more distortion of those ideas is going to occur. And the second, aside from that kind of communication with the general public through the media, is outreach. And one of the things that, responding also to an earlier question, what can currently training scholars and researchers do to change our culture? We can rewrite the narrative about outreach being something ancillary to our regular lives and our regular to-do lists, and make outreach a part of our research lives. So I run against the advice of my elders and wisers, while still an assistant professor. I started a neuroscience outreach called the Think Tank, and we managed to raise enough money to buy a truck to construct a neuroscience lab on wheels, topped with this really remarkable sculpture. It's about a 6-foot-long, anatomically correct giant glowing brain that both glows on top of the truck as we're driving through the city, and also dismounts for classroom and festival use in teaching. And it has been a way to make sure that my work does not stay within the ivory tower. This was when I was working in Southside Chicago, and I was working in an island of incredible wealth and privilege in a larger neighborhood of a lot of poverty and social difficulties. And it was a way to make sure that we literally left the boundaries of campus and made sure that we were carrying the ideas that we were working on and our excitement about research into a broader community. And so I think that if conversations with the media and outreach are part of your daily workflow, that both enriches your life, potentially enriches the lives of people who don't have direct access to the ivory tower, and helps you to sort out your priorities.
Thank you. Priya, would you like to go ahead? Oh, wait, also out of curiosity, where is this glowing brain truck?
Oh, it's still at the University of Chicago. So if undergraduates are interested in having it join us here, the neuroscience professor who is going to take over the reins or the steering wheel has found that, well, nobody's doing anything during the pandemic, but she found during the past year, when my generation of think tank brainiacs graduated, that she wasn't able to sustain the project, and I absolutely understand why. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of luck. So I have asked, when I moved here from Chicago 3-ish years ago, I asked, would there be interested in moving this project? And the answer from my college and my department, human ecology and human development, was we can't do that. I wonder if circumstances have changed. So if you are interested in having the think tank, having a one-of-a-kind piece of steam roll its way to Cornell, look up thethinktank.edu online and learn about the project, or contact me, and you could pass along that message to your chairs or deans or professors. I would be very happy for the think tank to join us here.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just curious, but thank you, Dr. Casa Santo. Priya, were you go right ahead?
Not at all.
Sure. I was gonna say, I feel like someone from Burning Man will take you up on this like glowing brain truck thing if you can find a way to send it all the way to, I don't even know where that is, Arizona or something.
Yes,
it's in the desert.
Arizona.
It's very far. It's very far from Chicago, very far from New York. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, my only idea to add to that is I have really loved using Twitter to connect with other researchers and share my work. I think a lot of research circles can be kind of insular, you know, like you've got to be from the same school, you have to have the same advisor, you know, you have to have a certain title, you know, lot of conferences you have to apply for, you have to submit your work. So like there's just a lot of barriers, whereas Twitter, you just make a profile, tweet about what you do, you know, engage with other researchers that are doing the same thing. And so as someone studying physician decision making, Twitter's been amazing for me because I'm able to connect directly with doctors, activists, journalists, other grad students, other faculty, you know, faculty and grad students who are not at my school, so I wouldn't have met them otherwise. You know, and you can follow these very nicely tailored hashtags for whatever issues you're interested in. And so I found it to be a really great way for getting more research come across my eyeball, so it's like easier for me to stay updated on what other people are doing, and also like very, you know, free, no barriers way to share my work as well. So I highly recommend getting on Twitter.
Thank you.
Probably
And
one- You're probably wondering now, what do I use? I was too late on Twitter games, so I think it's hard to get on Twitter now. I was primarily on Instagram, but somehow I'm finding an in terms of what I just studied, like what people are doing in terms of breaking down research. You'll see a kid, oh, you'll see a channel or an Insta handle that will have thousands of people flooding and hundreds of thousands likes, and then behind it are youth, like two high school kids behind it. And I think that's fascinating. I think that's like the epitome of this idea of breaking the ivory tower and like letting access to resources flow through. At the same rate, I just hope those youth are, you know, paying homage, paying respect to the folks and the research they get it from. Most of them are, right? They're getting cited by blank, you know. But what I've seen is on Instagram, something that I use it a lot, and that's how I connect to like what Pri was saying about like other researchers. I'm seeing a lot of Asian American researchers that I'm like, where are we? And then mental health, like, where are we? Because in the Filipino American community or Filipinx American community, it's a taboo. It's a taboo to talk about mental health. So I'm like, I'm looking for mentors, right? How can I read from other people and learn from other people? So I'm following different channels, and some of the mentors are actually younger than I am, and I think that's powerful. I think that's like some of the core ideas of pedagogy of the oppressed is like, you know, power is ever flowing, and I feel like this idea of like everyone has power in a very unique way, right? And people it's just a matter of like realizing it and then harnessing it, right? And I think that's powerful in and of itself. So Instagram is great. Gen Z is all over it. Gen pandemic, I don't know what you call the next wave of youth, but they're on it too. So I hope it still continues, because I'm trying to get more work out there. Because I don't know what the next one is. TikTok, Twitch. Yeah, you tell me.
frankly, I haven't even heard of Twitch, but yes. Oh, the quarantines, I'm told. Like teens, EENS. Yes. But yes, so one final question, we're coming up on the hour, and that is, how do you keep from burnout? What strategies do you employ to keep on with your work and stay motivated? Priya, if you'd like to begin.
Sure. Let's see. I don't know. I mean, I did feel a lot of burnout in grad school, but grad school is like that. Take a beat before you decide to go to grad school. It's not for the faint of heart. I think the same of advice sort of applies to everything. Just remember the values that are driving your efforts. So, you know, when you're in the middle of it, it can feel like it's about the publication, it's about getting this award, it's about getting invited to speak at this thing, but just really try and connect back to the values, which is likely, you know, you're interested in research because it's exciting and it's creative, and ideally you're hoping to help people with your work. And then, yeah, I would say one thing I tried to remind myself a lot of was just focusing on the inputs rather than the outputs. Outputs are determined a lot by luck, but your inputs are what are under your control. And so sometimes an experiment will work or sometimes it won't, but, you know, just focus on the process and enjoy the journey. And yeah, I think the pandemic is also just teaching everyone that we've got to like lean into our communities, lean into our self-care practices. Remember that all of this is secondary to our connections with others and our being well and treating other people with care. So yeah, again, a lot of times it can feel like it's about the paper, but you know, everything else is really more important. So yeah.
Definitely, thank you. Tony, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think this goes back to I just found a mentor on Asian American mental health. So for me, it's funny that you can just gain mentors out there, and I asked them through a DM, and they responded just like without payment of saying, hey, you know, this is free labor and free knowledge for you, free consulting. But essentially, I guess you can get lucky depending on who you are, what time it is, and what they have on their plate. But the response was just one yes for me. One more no is one more yes for me, essentially, is something that I've been trying to keep in hand. And just keeping this sense of boundaries with my parents. There's a lot of expectations from my parents. We call it utang na laob, which means like a blood debt, right? There's this unspoken debt that you owe to your family, right? That in of itself is pressure, right? That impedes my self-care. And then there's just the world grind culture, right? Being at Ivy League institutions, being here, Cornell, Harvard, all these names, just in the DNA of it speaks grind culture and capitalism, production, right? So I'm just trying to be wary of how many times I speak for free for myself, how many times I'm doing this work. Filipino American History Month is tough, Annabella, because you're probably pulled too. Like, can you talk to me about this? Wait, what? Like, hold up. Like, I don't want to be the expert on this field, especially if you're not paying for the labor, right? So I've been really cognizant of that, especially in equity field, because I know my field is a feminist labor. So I want to make sure and honor that.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Casa Santo.
Unmute, there we go. These are good answers. Priya, I really like the suggestion to focus on the inputs and not the outputs, because the inputs are what you have control over. I think that for me, it never really occurs to me to think about burnout, and I think it's because I have been fortunate enough to avoid the trap that leads to the following joke. You've probably heard the process of getting a PhD or the process of becoming an expert in almost anything is the process of learning more and more about less and less until you know everything about nothing, which doesn't sound very interesting, right? And I think that there are people who feel that way, who feel like they are drilling down and drilling down and drilling down, and that does not help you to connect to broader issues in the broader world. It helps to isolate you and make your research important to a smaller and smaller community of people whose expertise overlaps with yours. And I think one of the ways to avoid that, in line with focusing on the inputs, is to focus on the biggest questions that possible and make sure that as a researcher, you are framing all of your questions at multiple levels of abstraction and making sure that the detailed work that you do in the laboratory is in the service of the biggest question with the greatest gain in new knowledge possible. And from that perspective, you can never get bored, because instead of the margins narrowing, the borders fade, and the farther you go, the more you realize how much you need to learn.
Thank you very much. And with that marks the end of the Humanities Minisymposium. I would like to offer my profuse gratitude to all of the speakers and all of the attendees who came through today. Thank you for taking the time and putting together these incredible presentations. And I'm going to send out some information on the rest of Curb Fall Forum. So we have the Sciences Minisymposium this Friday with a similar setup, different individuals. And if you'd like to learn more about Curb Fall Forum, you will be able to do that at that link for our website. And if you'd like to hear more about the research that the undergraduates themselves are presenting, please check out the link I have posted there. But thank you all very much for everything you've done for this evening, and I hope you have a good night.